Well, I don't really pick roles that are easy. I love a challenge.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more time for Imagine Dragons.
I don't know what it means. I don't know what it... Does it mean he's a tennis ball?
We're going down, down, baby. Oh, turn on my rainbow, doom, baby. Come.
A squeep squeep to you and yours.
Live from my grandmother's basement, we are the only Chris Gethard Presents podcast. We are Trash People. I am Emily Pineapple.
And I'm Forrest, the keeper of the canon.
And each week we profile the comedian, artist, or... I suppose they've all been like comedians or performers.
Yeah, so far.
Except for the Found Footage Festival guys.
I mean, they're performers. They host.
That's true.
Shows.
That's true.
And they
technically they're
also
archivists.
They're archivists and editors.
I feel like archivist and editor
and curators,
like it just adds more flavor. So, but we profile whoever the fuck is hosting.
Yes.
Chris Gethard Presents every week. And this week is episode 404, Enchanted Pumice 2, which means we're profiling Mary Houlihan.
Yeah.
Woo! This will be on February 26th, 2020. And the cast includes Nick Nanny as Jamie, who has an illegitimate son.
Oh.
And last week, Nick Nanny co-hosted The Fancy Ones with Sebastian Di Natale. This was an amazing choose-your-own-adventure teleplay.
Yeah, definitely. If you are somehow listening to our pod and didn't see it,
you're like, oh, I'm Mary Houlihan's friend.
Yeah.
I should listen to this podcast about her because she's super awesome. She is.
She is amazing.
But also, if you're Mary Houlihan's friend, you're probably Nick Nanny's friend.
And probably Sebastian's as well.
So stop being such a terrible friend and watch their Choose Your Own Adventure teleplay. Like, seriously, why are two strangers telling you what a bad friend you are?
I mean, I feel like one stranger's telling you what a bad friend you are. I understand that you're a busy person in our workaday world and, you're just in the rat race, just trying to keep your head above water and getting by, so I forgive you.
I don't.
Yeah.
Well, the next person is Sam Taggart, appearing as Roger, who has had all his organs removed. I know a person who had all of their organs removed IRL in real life.
Wait, what? Okay.
They had
wild.
gangrene on them. If your appendix bursts, take care of it. Because if you don't, you could get gangrene, and then they have to take out all your organs and wash them off and put them all back.
In her AMA earlier today, Mary, on her Discord AMA, to be specific, on Planet Scum, Mary said that Roger will pay a physical price for drinking that jug of throwing acid. So maybe that's why he has to get his organs all taken out and cleaned off. You might have just hit on it.
Shit, he's going to have to relearn how to walk?
Well, and interestingly, not only will he walk, so everything you've talked about so far was from one of the tweets that CGP or Mary tweeted out, but also based on Mary's promo from last week's episode, we know that not only does Roger, to not stumble over his name, learn how to walk, he learns how to run for mayor. I think he's cashing in on his heroism.
Ooh. Well, he also hosted Taggart and Wittert Lawyers at Law, a previous CGP episode, and co-hosts the weekly stand-up show Bright Horizons with Mary Jo Rummerl and
Eliza Hurwitz, who played Lizette in the first Enchanted Pumice and is returning as Lizette in this one, and she has a boyfriend who works at CERN, which is where the Large Hadron Collider is.
I'm concerned about what's going to happen when they turn that thing on.
I'm very curious. And Eliza also appeared on Little Green Guys as the co-host of the competing show about salamanders and turtles that's across the street.
We also have Tommy McNamara, who will be hosting a future episode of CGP.
He also co-hosted Sandwich Night with Chris.
And he also has a podcast called Stand By Your Band,
yes,
which like most of these people who are on CGP have been on.
Yeah, and it's a fun show. Joe Romerl talked about They Might Be Giants, which I enjoyed because I like both of those things.
I forget who Nick Nanny talked about.
I don't remember either.
But I do remember who else is in this episode.
Maria Randazzo, who had a role in CEO Skyscraper as woman and is fairly new to the CGP verse. So I'm glad that we get to welcome in someone new.
There is also Brad Howe, the Maple Man. So Sebastian Di Natale did a video co-written with Zach DeLazzo and Brad Howe called The Maple Man, and you should see it because it is wonderful and horrifying.
Brad Howe also ran camera on it.
It scratches every single itch. How he ran camera on himself?
That's what it said.
Oh, probably on the scenes where he wasn't in it.
Or still set up framing and everything and then like with someone else and then.
But everyone should watch that because it is for everyone. Every human should see it. Show it to babies. Show it to old people.
It's the reason YouTube was made.
It is.
And CGP, of course.
Yes.
And then we also have Planet Scum's own Jazz. Jazz frequently appears on Planet Scum online and in the audience for CGP, and you can see her over on Discord.
She's in this week's episode?
Yeah.
How did I miss that?
Because you missed it, Mary's AMA.
Holy
and
crap.
when I asked if there were any CGP people that Mary wanted to tease, she listed Maria, Brad, and Mary's own, and then our next person, who is Mary's boyfriend, Steve, and Jazz, and tagged at...
Doing what?
Didn't say. So I don't know. We don't know how Jazz is in it, but Jazz is in it.
Ooh. But Steve is also gonna be on there.
Yes, and
Mary's boyfriend, Steve.
That's all I know. I don't know if he's been on CGP. I don't know if he was in the background in the first one or not. Doesn't sound like it, but he'll be on this week. And then joining Steve in an Enchanted Pumice debut is Claire O'Kane.
Claire O'Kane herself, the icon of the SF comedy scene, San Francisco, is what I mean by that. And hosted Cool Train.
And I'm so excited that she's making her return to CGP. She also was on multiple episodes of our dearly departed CGP podcast with Gethard.
And she's also married to Nick Nanny, which means that she should probably be credited with last week's The Fancy Ones.
Oh, because of the whole, and to my wife who edited it, and then it turns out, who was like edited, typed, and researched my book. But yes. I wrote it because I suggested she write a book about an obscure historical fact.
This is like 99% of the science and history and literature, like criticism books written in the 19th and 20th centuries. They were written by women. They were written by the wife.
And so we have a few more details about the episode. Based on her promo from CGP last week, as we mentioned, Roger runs for mayor, and Marianne's 6 children go to college. And on Discord, she said she's an empty nester now, so that seems to be true. And then, when I asked Mary for the official snack of this episode during her Discord AMA, she said it was soup.
Like eggs?
She said eggs are not soup. So I don't know how to keep this canon. Because I'm getting all sorts of different messages from Jersey Dave and Mary.
Who trumps who?
I'm not going to determine that. Once someone provides the canon system that I can keep, I am not the generator of the canon system. I'm Forrest, the keeper of the canon. And then I asked if this episode was a direct sequel to the previous episode or if it was just another random episode of the long-running series Enchanted Pumice. And she says, it's like if Enchanted Pumice was a soap opera with 20-episode seasons, the last episode was season 10, episode 6, and this is season 10, episode 7. So there's sequential episodes in the seasons of Enchanted Pumice, but they're not episode 1 and 2 of Enchanted Pumice.
I love it. Perfect. Beautiful. We have a correction to issue. On a couple of previous episodes, we referred to Spike Einbinder.
I think so, yes.
Spike Einbinder by their dead name while discussing their appearances on podcasts and web series. We didn't realize that they had changed their name, and so we regret this error and urge you to seek out Spike Einbinder.
Spike is in a lot of episodes of The Special, was in Actors,
freaking hilarious
amazing
in actors. Oh my God.
I love Spike. Spike's one of the highlights of the special without Brett Davis, as we mentioned. And speaking of highlights of the special without Brett Davis, we
have condolences.
Yeah, we want
to share. Like truly. So this week, Mr. Joke, Steve Whalen, unexpectedly passed away, and we want to share those condolences with his friends and family and the entire New York comedy community. I was introduced to him in the course of this podcast, watching episodes of the special, and then did some research after seeing how broken up everyone was, because, you know, the entire community that we now follow was suddenly posting about him. And now I'm so sad.
Yeah.
He seemed like the biggest sweetheart. He drove comedians to gigs in his van. It sounds like he made it possible for a lot of people in the New York comedy community to be in the comedy community and to practice their art and to meet each other and have a place to play and a place and someone that they could go to. He also was a staunch defender of women in the scene. I don't have the specific story pulled up because we didn't want to like tack things of him like just onto this episode, because we feel like if we were to talk about him at length, he would deserve his own episode.
Yeah, we're not going to do a condensed little profile because we want to, if we have the chance to do one, we want to do it for a whole episode to really dedicate the time that he deserves, because he's got so much. His body of work he did so much. Yeah, and we know
we know that we're probably going to talk about. He's just going to come up over the course of this episode, so we wanted to share our condolences. And yeah, it really sounds like he made it a safe place for people to have comedy and made it accessible to people, and that's a role that isn't often celebrated in scenes. You don't hear about those people as much, and it was great. Everyone should do their best to ferry their friends to shows.
Absolutely.
And hug each other and punch a misogynist for him.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. I mean, that's always a good idea.
I don't know if he has punched a misogynist.
I don't either.
But he's definitely defended women, according to women. I don't know. We'll probably do something about him.
Yeah, we want to do something about him later, but we're not right in this episode. We want to give him the time he deserves.
Yes. So this is our second episode about Mary Houlihan, and traditionally, in the second episode of a particular host, we go through things that we loved in their social media presence, because in this day and age, one's social media profiles, presence, posts are an integral part of their career as a comedian.
Oh, absolutely.
And so we will be talking about 15 things that we loved from Mary's social media, and then we will do a condensed history of soap operas.
I can't believe it.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, so it was really, really fun researching those, because I was like, oh, Mary Houlihan's like actually just doing a soap opera.
Yeah, I when you were telling me some things about soap operas, I learned it's not as heightened. Didn't need to be as heightened as we thought to get to the comedy, because soap operas are almost there on their own.
Almost there. So the first thing that we loved from Mary's social media is this beautiful little tweet posted on February 17th of 2020. Seinfeld is the only good TV show about a stand-up, because they understand that literally anything is more interesting to watch. Soup, old people, parking, etc., than a real-life comedian.
I love that. I love that joke so much. And it's,
Yeah, Nicholas Glazin responded, would you like to be his voice?
I've had this same thought. Instead of showing us the literal process of joke crafting, it just immerses us in his nitpicking and obsessive outlook on life, which is a huge part of Jerry's character on the show. He's like a neat freak and fixates on all these little things to get to observational comedy.
And it sounds like that is how he crafted his jokes about airplane food.
Oh, yeah. No, given Jerry's brand of comedy, I'm sure that is exactly what his daily life was like before he had his huge break, and still is, but in a different, fancier place.
Yeah, very fancy, and mostly about how college students just don't get it.
But you know what college students do get and love?
Oh, what?
Joe Pera talks with you. And Mary Houlihan painted every title card that you see on this show. And they're often gorgeous paintings of very mundane objects.
They're sort of watercolory. They have a lot of depth and visual interest. They're really truly beautiful.
And they're a rectangle where each corner is a different item. So on Joe Pera takes you to the grocery store, the center object is a shopping cart. And then in the corners there's whole wheat bread, butter, meat on a toothpick, and an apple. And I just love that combination of a very mundane object with this beautiful artistry that Mary brings to it. And she's tweeted out all of every single one so far. And so we're going to have a link to that in our show notes. And what I really like is she's broken out not only the title card, but also the individual elements. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, it's like a small little quarter or a bean. So on the title card, you can see it and appreciate that there's detail there. But to really, really see the detail in its full glory and the skill that is on display, it's cool seeing those little elements blown up so you can get all of that yourself.
I want to do an art installation about comedy in New York, where these TV shows that really can't be expressed on walls of a museum, mm-hmm. but this is all of Mary Houlihan's paintings.
Yeah, no, I would
just
love
be
that.
Joe Pera, behold. So our next thing, our third thing that we loved from her social media, I fucking love this. It is the top female cartoon character countdown posted on December 3rd, 2019. It's a lovely sort of Watch Mojo countdown list of the best cartoon characters, the female cartoon characters who can go just as hard as the boys. And it is all extremely pornographic drawings of cartoon characters like Minnie Mouse,
Princess Toadstool, aka Peach,
Lisa Simpson,
and one more that you'll have to watch the video to find out.
Ooh.
But what I love about it is Mary never acknowledges it in the video.
Yeah, they're showing porn. It's a really, really lovely.
It's very graphic.
It's very graphic.
The video it's a great study in using dissonance
mm-hmm.
for comedic effect, because the presentation is very polished and very Watch Mojo, like you said. It's
list shows typical basic ass stuff that you would find on cable TV or on a YouTube channel that gets its money from God knows what.
Right. And then having that corresponding with these incredibly graphic pieces of fan art is just a masterclass in comedy.
It truly is.
Our fourth thing is Mary's own Patreon.
You can support Mary and all of the awesome comedy that she makes at various levels of a support. But she has really, really actually awesome benefits from this. She
So depending on the level at which you support her, you can either get a monthly newsletter.
That's $5 a month.
Yes. Or a monthly zine.
The newsletter is comedic, and you also get humor essays from her, just throughout the month, I suppose, just as she writes them.
The newsletter will be funny, insightful, and even have some inspirational quotes, plus blog posts and humor essays throughout the month. At the $10 level, you get a new issue of her zine every month.
A zine! You
get
a zine a month for $10 a month. Zines cost $10 in a fucking nice comic book store. A real nice zine, like this shit. So you're basically just paying for a really cool zine that you can put in your bathroom, and then all of your friends will be like, wow, you're so quirky and cool. And then that person that you invited over from Tinder is going to be like, oh, hey.
And then if you support Mary at the $20 level, $20 a month level, you can get a print of one of her paintings to hang in your house.
which is so cool. She's
and at the $30
fantastic artist
per month level, you get the zine and the print. And then for our generous donors at the $60 a month level, you will receive a one-of-a-kind original painting of her choosing, plus a zine, every single month. That is an incredible value, so please support Mary Houlihan today.
Seriously, do past
it's amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool. Past Scene themes have included writing a fictional high school literary magazine, which includes art and artist statements, including this ode to RFK.
Robert Kennedy.
I wanted to draw RFK after we learned about him in history class. He was brothers with JFK, who was a president and owned an airport called the JFK International Airport. Like his brother, RFK was also shot to death by the CIA. They blamed it on a Palestinian man named Sirhan. But through the use of forensic ballistics, private investigators found that the number of bullet holes in the doorframe didn't match the police reports of shots fired by Sirhan. That's why after I graduate, I'm going to work in forensic ballistics.
And in a tweet that we'll include in the show notes, the art that's paired with it's just incredible. It's like an incredibly lifelike graphite drawing of RFK. And that the combination of like that incredibly well drawn art with that description, it's just like, it's so good. And so, yeah, definitely support Mary on Patreon. And
it's well worth it.
We'll have the link, but if you're the type of person who would rather type it out yourself for some reason, go to patreon.com/Mary Houlihan.
Our fifth thing that we love from her social media was a tweet about what our old buddy Joe Rumroll, that Muppet who's dating Rachel Pegram.
And co-hosted, and technically co-hosts Cartoon Monsoon with Mary Houlihan.
On December 14th, 2019, Mary posted, me and at 2 Ton Bug, which is Joe Rumroll, are staying in adjacent rooms in a Days Inn in a suburban Vermont. I'm listening to a lecture off my phone by historian Chris Dietrich about the 1973 OPEC oil embargo. I assume Joe is watching a YouTube comp of Snoopy's most epic takedowns of the Red Baron.
It's just, that's so perfect for his persona.
It is exactly what his persona would be doing.
I love it. It's like that, like, other cartoons feel less appropriate for his persona.
But he replied with what he was actually doing in his room, which was listening to Mr. Jokes.
Yeah,
jokes.
He was doing the I Love This Crowd challenge where he was lip syncing to a Mr. Jokes joke in the mirror. And Mary also did it in response to him doing it.
All of Mr. Jokes jokes. Mr. Jokes has a 93-track album. Each track's about like 11 seconds because there are 93 jokes in like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And they are all gold.
And what's also gold is our sixth thing, Teen Beat on the Teen Street, which was posted November 5th, 2019. And in it, intrepid reporter Mary Houlihan hits the streets of New York to interview teens and interview olds about teens.
I've heard of teens, but teens having teens? No, thanks.
I love the guy at the end that just like has a doll and like holds it next to her head and is just like, this isn't my doll.
That's all he does.
That's all he does. He's just a guy who has the doll and it's not his doll. And then the Snapchat glasses part, it's just so good.
Yeah, she puts on Snapchat glasses, but is taken down by them because she is too old.
Yeah, and then she gets some hot gossip from a high schooler who works at the Bean, like a great coffee hangout. So it's a great video. Definitely go watch it. Mary learns from some talented teens.
Number 7, Mary Houlihan parodies Tomi Lahren?
Tomi Lahren.
Tomi Lahren, a terrible human.
She's like a conservative commentator person and a jerk.
She's just shitty and she looks like just like blonde.
Yeah.
She's just a Barbie with terrible ideas.
But Mary plays the character Sammy White Woman and will usurp her someday.
So she does a whole parody video as this character of like basic ass white lady spewing opinions that don't make any sense. And that's it. Tommy Lauren, I will dethrone you. I think that we should all vote or get behind our new Khaleesi, Sammy White Woman. Truly.
Our new Khaleesi.
Yeah.
I don't know why that broke me so hard.
So number 8, as a Forest Keeper of the Canon is destroyed.
I'm back.
And it works because this is a tweet sharing humorous observations about new birth control. On October 6th, 2019, she tweets, "Sucks, because I have some pretty humorous observations about my new birth control, but it doesn't really feel me to tweet about it," which is why I will voice it for her. Tweet number 2, what's cool about the birth control implant is that instead of remembering to take a pill every day, now I just have to remember to get a plastic rod inserted into my arm by a doctor every day. Tweet number 3, what's cool about the birth control implant is that on the pill, I never got my period, but with the implant, I only get my period. Beautiful.
And then number 9 is about how British humor is different than American humor. British humor is actually really different than American. It's all blokes are like this, birds are like that. Accent was awful. What was that?
Blokes are like this, birds are like that.
And then Julia Clare, who appeared on Comedy Amateur Class Volume 1, replied with,
I proper pulled this bird last night, hump stool.
And then Mary replied, online dating is hard, isn't it?
Online dating is
Online
hard.
dating is hard, isn't it? Isn't it?
I need to listen to a Harry Potter
Now
chapter in order to get into the voice.
I'm just glad that we are not having to go through the ordeal Random Jean went through.
Oh.
Where an actual British person critiqued her accent live on the air because Jean's accent was better than either of ours.
Yes.
So that British person would have just been way meaner to us about it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Please don't roast us.
No, we know that those are not accents that we can do. But we tried anyway and lost well for you, the listening audience.
Yes, we did. Number 10, our favorite thing Mary tweeted, was about a New York Times article that she made illustrations and a video for. This was February 22nd, 2020, about crystals that give people in their 30s powers that they can actually use.
And it was written by Stephen Markow.
Yes. So these include things like amethyst, which will give you the ability to have one drink and not have a hangover.
Yeah, that is a useful one.
The ability to know what Visco girls are.
Yeah.
I have no idea what that means.
Oh, you don't know what Visco girls are?
I don't know what...
It's a thing they do.
Ah, I see. Just in the streets, they call to each other.
No, it's a whole... It's like...
Am I cool now? Am I young?
Works...
Am I down with the youths?
Kind of like... It works like laughter. It's like how you mash the keyboard when you're like, haha, like it's... Because it's SK, 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 which are like both one key in from each edge of the keyboard, and it's like a noise your mouth can do easily. So it's like... Apparently it's the equivalent of saying I can't even in 2013.
I see.
And I get that because that was when I was a youth.
I see.
If you're a member of Generation Z and want to call out a couple of olds for trying to understand your culture, please.
Us.
It's us. Yeah, no, it's us.
That's us.
It's us. I'm making fun of us.
Yes.
I don't have that. I guess I must have like a fragment of Sapphire because I'm like, oh yeah, I know what those are vaguely, but I don't know the specifics. We need to get me more Sapphire.
More Sapphire. In our number 11 thing that we love from Mary is her relating to a Ken Burns country documentary on October 8th, 2019. She shares, as an artist, I found so many stories from the Ken Burns country documentary deeply relatable. For instance, I too found it incredibly difficult living in the shadow of my father, Hank Williams Sr. I don't actually get that joke at all.
So Hank Williams Sr. and Hank Williams Jr. are both country music singers. Hank Williams Sr. is like a legend in country. Like one of the best of all time, according to many people who love the genre, and is just like a peak of country music as a whole. Hank Williams Jr. is the Are You Ready for Some Football guy.
Oh, hey!
So it's that thing of like legend to Are You Ready for Some Football?
Well, are you ready?
No, I'm never ready for football. I'm never ready for that. But what I did relate to, sorry, I think it was what you were about to transition to. I related a lot to our 12th thing, proof of income, because I used to freelance a lot.
This was October 3rd, 2019.
And Mary said, providing proof of income to realtors is so degrading. Like, here's my boyfriend's recent pay stubs, and here's my 600 freelance invoices for $11 each for jobs like my podcast appearance on The Boner Pod, and the time I got hired to write a joke for a shy doctor who wanted to be more confident. Yeah, I definitely, that was me every year at tax time. Because I would have to go and be like, oh, yeah, no, I got that one for like a show about how this wife almost got away with killing her husband.
It's like how many shows about getting away with killing people?
Almost getting away with killing
Almost getting away with killing people. That makes me feel very secure.
We have to abide by the Hays Code. We can't violate the Hays Code. The wrongdoers have to be punished by the end of it.
Yes. Yes, we do need that kind of
our movies need to be morally upright.
Morally upright. Number 13. Mary chooses the movie. This was August and October 2019. Mary shares, BF. I think it would be really fun to live together, smiley face. Me, smiley face. 45 minutes later. Boyfriend. Just put on whatever movie you want. Me, okay. Boyfriend. What is this? Me. Oh, it's a documentary about a factory in the Rust Belt that's owned by Chai. Boyfriend. No. We should have done this back and forth.
Yeah, we should have.
That would have been probably a lot more understandable to everyone.
Yeah, probably.
Shall we do it real quick?
Okay.
Forrest? All right.
I think it'd be really fun to live together, smiley face.
Smiley face.
45 minutes later. Just put on whatever movie you want.
Okay.
What is this?
Oh, it's a documentary about a factory in the Rust Belt that's owned by Chai.
Oh, no.
And we got an update about this text conversation.
And the text on the tweet said, just think, a month from now, he will finally be checking out that book about the Pullman strike I keep recommending.
So the image is a text conversation in which the boyfriend messages her.
And he says, I'm watching a doc about the Chinese taking over an American glass factory in Ohio and treating the workers like shit.
Yep.
And then she says, babe, that's the movie I tried to watch with you in Scotland, and you were like, no. And he says, hee hee. And then she links the original tweet. And then he just says, hey, I wasn't in the mood. And then she says, it's good, right?
I think it was good.
And apparently she was actually referencing a specific book about the Pullman strike in her tweet about that. She was specifically talking about The Edge of Anarchy, The Railroad Barons, The Gilded Age, and the Greatest Labor Uprising in America by Jack Kelly.
She's hella into history.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, really into history. Like, to the point where I feel like
what? Yeah.
She's so much smarter than me, I don't even know what to do.
She's very smart. And it's that passion for history that helped her uncover the thing that she exposes in tweet number 14, which was on November 18th, 2019.
You actually shouldn't donate your car to 1877 Cars for Kids because I heard they make the cars kiss each other. Sad face.
Unfortunately, Brandon E., who's a tweeter, responded that he had just donated his car.
Gasp. So don't do it because they make the cars kiss each other. No. Don't do it.
And if we were crueler, this is where we would do a parody version of their jingle, but we won't do that to you.
We won't because it's already stuck in my head.
Me too. Number 15 is about, vetting on television shows. And Mary said, every TV show I've been up for says, we love your pilots and your videos and your New Yorker stuff and your Twitter and everything you've ever made, and the head writer loved you. We're trying really hard to convince the network. SNL. Sorry, we didn't Google the corn cob before we're giving him a job.
Yup. Because
this is about the guy who said bad things about lots of people,
including Chris Gethard,
and was hired for SNL along with Bowen Yang, and Bowen Yang of La Culturistas is still on.
Yep. But according to NPR,
NPR did the naming the other way around and named the guy who got fired, but didn't name Bowen Yang.
No, but they did give SNL credit for hiring their first Asian American staff member.
Yes, they referred to his demographic, but not his name.
Not his name.
Or comedic skills.
Nope.
But we also have a special bonus tweet from Mary on this episode, where she shouted out someone you're likely quite familiar with as a CGP viewer.
She said, lot of year-end lists, yet no one has mentioned the actual funniest thing this year. When at Sebi Di Natale, renting out a theater for his birthday, saying all week we were going to watch his favorite movie, then concluded the speech the day of, with no further ado, Peter Farrelly's Green Book. And then, boom, Waiting for Guffman starts playing.
That is such a good joke.
It is a very good joke.
Especially for a room full of comedians.
Yeah.
And like media people. Like,
to just be like, what the fuck are we here for? What have we been tricked into?
Your favorite movie is Green Book? It was actually Waiting for Guffman, which is a better movie.
I have never seen either.
Waiting for Guffman's a Christopher Guest movie.
Sure.
Christopher Guest was a cast member on the National Lampoon Radio Hour and did Best in Show.
Oh, I love Best in Show. Heck yes.
Yeah, no, it's a much better movie than Green Book.
Well, now that we have gone through all of the wonderful things that you can find if you follow Mary Houlihan, and the even cooler things if you support her on her Patreon.
Also, Nick Nanny responded to it with a fun picture of Sebastian. He said a tweet with, my face when he said Green Book, and it's just like, it's a great picture of Sebastian. Yeah. Check that link out in the show notes.
But now that we've gone over those things, it's time to get a little context into what Mary Houlihan's doing with Enchanted Pumice and Enchanted Pumice 2. We're going to learn a little soap opera history, friends.
Yes.
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 So, as many people know, the term soap opera originated from the radio dramas that were originally what soap operas were, being sponsored by soap manufacturers.
That makes a lot of sense.
It does. And the first serial considered to be a soap opera was called Painted Dreams. This was a radio drama which debuted on October 20th, 1930 on Chicago radio station WGN. That was 1 year after my grandmother was born.
Wow.
Yeah. Soap narratives, like those of film melodramas, were marked by what Steve Neal, who is a person who says things, described as chance happenings, coincidences, missed meetings, sudden conversions, last-minute rescues and revelations, deus ex machina endings.
And so one difference between what much of the TV broadcasting early on and then soap operas was that soap operas were specifically targeted for women, to women, whereas the rest of it was not, let's say. It was targeted mostly towards men.
And what was cool about that was that they often hired women to produce those shows, to write those shows. Painted Dreams was written by a woman. And it was mostly, I read like a transcript of Painted Dreams, and it was like literally two women talking about how they don't look good in the color orchid. It'll make them look super washed out. And the other one's like, no, you should totally wear this dress to this event. They had
that makes sense, because like you look at how film and everything was back then, and it was also a lot of just like, look, you're hearing people or seeing people.
Yeah.
Isn't that magical? There's no one in your room. How could she look bad in Orchid, this floating voice? Because through the magic of radio, it is a person in New York City talking to you. Sorry, in Chicago, Illinois, talking to you right now.
Yes. But what was really cool about the soap operas is that it created jobs for women in
That is
media. They were producers, they were writers, they were actors. The person who wrote Painted Dreams, Erna Phillips, also wrote Guiding Light.
And Guiding Light was around until like relatively recently.
Yeah.
Like that. But is it still around? No, it ended in 2009.
And Angus Nixon wrote All My Children.
That is still around.
Which is still around. And Lee Phillip Bell, together with her husband, William Bell, did The Bold and the Beautiful and The Young and the Restless.
I had no idea that both of the shows, soap operas, were written by the same people. Like, they loved that naming convention so much.
They probably owned it.
They owned the blank and the blank?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blank and the blank. So the features of reality television, the features of soap operas are pretty interesting. In America, they mostly focused on very rich people doing rich people things. But the soap operas from the UK and Australia tended to focus more on everyday characters and situations, frequently set in working class environments, and often explored actual social realistic storylines. There was like, financial problems, marriage breakdown, etc. And they would also feature comedic elements. There would be like an affectionate, comedic stereotype, like the gossip or the grumpy old man, to be a comic foil to the emotional turmoil, which is not present in the U.S. in the U.S. soap operas.
In that they're what do you mean by that? Just they're more.
There are no comedic elements.
Okay.
In the U.S.
Okay.
Whereas there are in the UK.
That's interesting.
And Australia. I mean, what is sort of said about like UK comedies is that they're not all happy.
Yeah.
Like there's a sad storyline in that Christmas movie everyone used
Love
to be
Actually?
obsessed with. Yes. And they're like, whoa, that's so crazy. So they're more of a mix.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Something interesting that I found, we mostly are focusing in here on U.S. soap operas is the history I am looking into in the styles. But in Russia, the most popular serials explore the romantic quality of criminal and or oligarch life.
Oligarch
life.
Oligarch.
Oligarch.
That sounds like a Greek philosopher. Desire, Ogliarch. Ogliarch, the out of touch. No, that's interesting. The criminal and oligarch stuff. I mean, the oligarch part is very similar to the U.S. focus on rich families. But it's interesting that the criminal stuff was so big there because it feels like that's a big part of soap operas now in the U.S. And it also reminds me of telenovelas.
Yeah.
Which often have used crime to do a lot of like heightened storytelling.
Yeah. So there are some interesting features to the soap opera. In addition to who they focus on, there's a fascination not only with the characters, like people aren't only obsessed with the characters in the show, they're obsessed with the actors. Which
is why there's that soap opera magazine that we parodied in our art for the first Enchanted Pumice.
Yes. So, for example, in 1976, Time magazine was talking about soap operas, and they featured the first daytime soap operas, Bill Hayes and Susan Seaforth Hayes from Days of Our Lives, who were a married couple on screen and off. So that was often covered. Nowadays it's like, yeah, of course people are covering celebrities getting together. Like they always start dating, for the press, for every show. It started with soap operas because people selling movies noticed that people were really into figuring out what the hell actors were doing.
That's interesting.
Humans love gossip.
Well, yeah.
Like, humans be gossiping.
Yeah.
Literally, there was...
aliens get it. You get it. Then those humans, they gossip.
Straight up, though, in a sociology class, no, in the sociology class that I took,
sociology or neuroscience.
This was an anthropologist went to one of the like remaining hunter-gatherer, quote unquote, groups in Africa, I believe. And this is a group of maybe 30 or 40 people. Very, very small group. Nothing, much they don't interact with other people. All they're doing is like surviving, and, doing some cultural things. Like 99% of what they talked about, it was probably like 95% of what they talked about, gossip. About the same like 45 goddamn people that they spent all the time with. Constant gossip. Humans be gossiping.
That's really funny.
Yes. There were also some really interesting stylistic uniqueness.
And some of these you can definitely see in Enchanted Pumice.
Yeah.
Like the fact that stunts and complex physical action aren't really as much a part of the soap opera, and it's typically broadcast live from the studio and feels more like a stage play, which I think is part of why it's such a good fit for CGP, which has that live comedy feeling every week.
And nearly all of the soap operas originated in New York City.
Just like CGP.
Yeah, just like CGP. A number of the soap actors were also stage actors, and they would perform live theater during breaks.
Just like CGP, they perform live stand-up comedy in their breaks between their CGP episodes.
A construct unique to the U.S. daytime serials is this format that Enchanted Pumice like somewhat used. And I think that this is really interesting to me. It's where action will cut between various conversations and return to each at the precise moment that it was left. So, for example, if we're talking about Judy and I'm like, you know what? I think Judy's right here with us. And then they cut to somebody else and they have a conversation. They cut back to us. And it's the moment I stop talking about Judy. Rather than nowadays in a lot of TV dramas, there is an appearance of time having passed in between each cut itself. Even if we return to the two characters that we left a scene ago, like time has passed for them. It's not the precise moment.
Right.
And that's kind of jarring thinking about going back to the precise moment that we had just left. Because it's so not a feature.
Weird. Yeah, that would feel really weird to me because I'm so used to the other way of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
It would actually, I think, probably be like, wow, that's an interesting choice.
Right?
Like it would feel artsy almost, which is interesting.
Also in the US, scenes would often end with the pregnant pause and the close-up on the character where there's like music building before they cut to like a new scene or a commercial. And this is referred to a tag.
So you know what's funny? You know what
this is referred to as a tag.
You know what also did that? Star Trek, The Next Generation. Specifically The Next Generation.
A lot of pregnant pauses and swelling music.
There's a lot of Picard standing up from his chair as it goes, "Dah!"
And like a zoom in on his face.
Yeah. That's interesting that soap thing sort of got extracted out to other forms of opera for the television.
And just lots of other things. I mean, a lot of these things are obvious when you say them.
Right.
You're like, oh yeah, of course. It's that soap opera thing. I've seen it parodied in a million cartoons.
And Enchanted Pumice also used this one a lot.
Yes. And I fucking love it.
Yeah, I love it.
They traditionally use a 3-point lighting setup because there's also a backlight.
Yeah.
This is more of a technical thing.
Well, and they're doing it in a full-on studio, so it's very easy to do the 3-point lighting with using the lights hanging above and all that.
Yeah, and it's primarily because it was shot in a studio. Yeah. The lights are there. Yeah. That is where the lights are in the studio, so that's how it's going to look.
And interesting that the interiors are often furnished with stained wood wall panels and furniture and items with brown leather on the furniture to look expensive and sumptuous, and just to really seem everything is, the set dressing is such that these are well off characters.
And it was interesting learning that and thinking back to my mom watched soaps for a very short time when I was a child. And in all of the parodies, everything's like this dark brown. You're always in like these dark environments. And I'm like, oh, that's so they look rich.
Yeah, I never got that was why.
Like nowadays they would be in like an all white, super minimalist space.
I mean, it would be interesting to see if that's changed on some of these ones that have been on since this time and are still on today, to see if they do it differently. Because yeah, I think that the visual indicators of wealth have changed in a lot of ways. Because I think now that looks like specifically old wealth, not just rich.
Very few of the daytime soap operas, at least. There were also like primetime soap operas, which had a little more money to play with.
Is that like your 90210s and your Melrose Places?
Probably.
Okay.
There were very few exterior shots. These were shot on a studio. Australian and UK soap operas often did have a lot of exterior shot footage in every episode. And it's usually in the same location and often on a purpose-built set that they would just put new exterior locations on top of. But it was a common feature of theirs to like be outside of the bar.
That's interesting.
For a moment. Whereas in the US, it was just like, nope, interior to interior to interior. We're all in a dream. No one ever has to walk anywhere.
And then the visual quality of a soap opera is often lower than other US television dramas just because the budgets are lower and it's a quick production.
It's always on a multi-camera setup.
Which is really interesting. They don't edit it after the fact. They're just cutting live, which I never realized, but explains, honestly, a lot of the stylistic choices of a soap opera, including the blocking, where you often will have the character end up they'll start face to face if they're romantic, and then one character will turn 180 degrees facing out to sort of go through their emotional whatever, because then they're both in the single shot. And so that makes cutting it so much easier.
And they're both facing the audience.
Right. You don't have to worry about catching the back of someone's head in the big dramatic moment. They're always both facing out. And so it's so interesting. I always wondered why they did that. I assumed, and I think it's probably partially a relic of stage acting, but
it was so that they could shoot in that way. These were all interesting because of how Mary Houlihan uses them.
Yeah.
And how do you know who directed Enchanted Pumice 1? We'll do a quick Google on that because we're bad fake fans. But I thought that the fact that it was like live edited was really cool because I'm like, oh my God, this is probably exactly what like actual soap operas were doing.
Tessa Greenberg.
So this is like cool stuff that Tessa was doing it basically exactly the way that other soap operas were. The 3-camera setup where we were getting closer and further away, all the turns, the blocking was very soap opera.
Yeah.
Like how Nick Nanny and Mary Houlihan, like they would be talking to each other, but they would both be facing the audience in that like really unnatural soap opera way.
Yeah. And most of the conversations, every conversation I can think of was blocked that way.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was really cool. I really liked learning about all the stylistic elements. They often also, like soap operas, would follow the same group of people who had a reason to be together.
Oh yeah, there was a lot of families, couples,
and they're like working locations. Like General Hospital.
Yeah,
everyone's there because they work at the hospital. Everyone's at the salon because they work at the Enchanted Pumice.
And then Melrose Place was like an apartment complex, I think.
Probably.
I mostly know Melrose Place because Seinfeld had an entire episode structured around finding out what happened on that week's Melrose Place. Yeah, it was an apartment complex in West Hollywood, California.
Well, yeah, the fact that these were not replayed and that this was before Netflix, so you couldn't just catch up on what you missed, was part of why it declined. Most of the U.S.'s soaps ended between 2009 and 2012. Guiding Light was the longest running drama in television and radio history. Ended September 18th of 2009 after 72 years.
That's crazy.
72 years. 72.
It's wild that a show could run that long and not just be on forever, you know? You'd think
Right.
when you hit the almost quarter century mark, I think you start to think maybe this show is just going to be on forever.
Like As the
But-
World Turns ended in 2010 after 54 years.
That's also wild.
Fucking right. So yeah, the main reason why a lot of these failed was because women started working. Women
Yeah.
could work, daytime television viewing declined. New generations weren't raised watching soap operas with their moms.
And that's something that I've noticed a lot when I hear sort of like Generation X and boomers talk about, like a lot of like there's podcasters and stuff who are part of that generation who just have this familiarity with the
The
like
storylines.
Luke and Laura, like all those soap opera storylines, yeah, from their youth that I never had.
Yeah, I have literally no idea. Like, I know that my mom watched some soap operas, but I was too young to understand what was going on. I only have vague memories of interiors, you know?
Yeah, like I saw some 90210, which was also a soap opera, but I don't remember anything about it.
And so you couldn't have an intergenerational show the way that you could previously with Guiding Light for 72 years. Now, the show's super complex storylines are foreign. You can't follow them.
Yeah.
And in addition, young adult women, they weren't watching. They're the demographic group that soap opera advertisers were paying for.
Well,
And so
then,
if they're not watching, no one's paying for it.
no, and then I mean that's why I think it's interesting that sort of the next like and currently the intergenerational serialized storytelling is all the nerd stuff.
Yup.
Like in terms of that part of soap operas has been replaced by Star Wars and Marvel and all
Yeah.
of that stuff. And so it's interesting that when that medium started to sort of die, many of the aspects fragmented out. It wasn't that like something else took on all of those things. Like this part went to that. The melodrama went to reality TV.
Yeah, they were called docu-soaps originally.
Oh.
And reality TV absolutely displaced soap operas as a form of melodrama. There's, of course, a lot of melodrama in superhero things.
Oh,
but
yeah. Especially the ones made for TV. Like structurally, Supergirl and a lot of the CW shows are much more like soap operas than
Mhm.
any other genre.
Absolutely. The main thing separating them from soap operas are the stylistic things.
Yeah.
We can have exterior shots. We can have special effects. We can have action scenes.
It's not multicam and it's edited after the fact, so the characters don't have to cheat out in the same way.
Mm-hmm. Something that I thought was interesting that really put a nail in a lot of soaps is that the O.J. Simpson murder case.
Oh,
Yeah.
I remember that.
It both preempted and completed like an entire season of soaps. It was televised between 1994 and 1995. This completely changed the habits of people watching television. There were 10% fewer viewers after the trial ended.
Wow, because they'd
just-
broken the habit.
They'd broken the habit. They had no idea what was happening in the series. There was
right.
no way for them to just go on Netflix and catch up, binge in a weekend what had happened over the past year in Guiding Light.
So it's not like
They're just fucked.
they didn't air whatever the episode after when it started was. They were a year farther ahead in
Yeah.
the storylines. It wasn't like they just then were behind.
Yeah.
That's wild.
There was a whole year of story that had happened that they were unable to follow, that they just
Wow.
didn't watch. So it's like, why watch it? I mean, a lot of people now recognize that when it's like in between seasons, you forget that a show even existed. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, like now I have to remember what it was, and you don't watch it, which is why later seasons of a lot of shows like have a viewer drop off.
Interesting.
And so nowadays, as of 2017, Turkey, the country Turkey, is the second largest exporter of television soap operas.
Huh.
Yeah. It was the second largest drama exporter of the world behind the United States and has huge followings. These are soap operas in Asia, the Balkans, Eastern Europe, Latin America, the Middle East, and Africa. So where we see the US's soap operas stopping, a lot of other countries with like nascent film and television scenes are taking that place, are taking up that style. Stylistic elements, the types of storylines, the people that they're focusing on, obviously different.
Right, but at the broad strokes, it's identifiably
soap opera.
A soap opera of a kind.
They're open-ended stories that are meant to be viewed in sort of a serialized fashion, with each episode ending with the promise of resolve in the next episode.
I'm honestly surprised we haven't seen a resurgence of the form.
Well, I mean, it depends on what you think of as the form. Because certainly a lot of the stylistic elements, for example, the strange blocking.
Right.
The 3-point lighting.
Yeah.
The having a multicam setup where you're doing live editing. You don't have to do that anymore.
That's true. And we have plenty of melodramas. They're just not soap operas because they don't have those extra
elements.
Yeah.
And I think that the primary element that stood out for me is that they always end on that cliffhanger. And the closest thing in my head that I could think of, well, one, if there's a cliffhanger. Two, there's a lot of characters.
Right.
And you have a lot of time to spend with those characters because it's like 22 episodes. They're about 15 minutes or half an hour.
Yeah.
It reminded me of BoJack Horseman.
It reminded me of Jane the Virgin because it's doing
That's a telenovela
stuff. But yeah, no, BoJack is not dissimilar. I mean, I honestly just keep thinking of the Marvel movies.
Yeah.
Where if you miss a movie, you could be lost, and that the way they use the serialization to get you to go to every single one.
Yeah. It's really interesting and how they leave you with a cliffhanger at the end of each movie.
And that's more with the stingers.
Stingers. Yeah. You're right. I think that the Marvel movies are probably more closely aping the soap opera thing specifically than even BoJack Horseman, which the whole season is released on the same day. It was written and created with that knowledge. Like, they're not, are they going to see the next one the way that the people making Marvel movies are?
But, I mean, they still often end on a cliffhanger because they know, like, if you have to leave right now,
you're going to be thinking about it. But some of them don't.
No, that's true. It's much more of a mixed bag.
Mm-hmm.
And then Marvel does always have that little tease at the end of like, hey, come back, and then tells you the next movie.
Yeah.
So and it makes sense because Marvel's comics were also so aping soap operas early on in trying to distinguish themselves from DC by having all the human problems and melodrama in it. Like X-Men.
Oh,
really,
my God.
X-Men is a soap opera in terms of how the character dynamics work.
It absolutely is. Like, the primary focus is in a lot of cases on the emotions and dynamics of the characters and between the characters rather than, cool supervillains and lore.
And you've got the Jean and Scott love triangle, not triangle yet in the early days, but romance.
In the early days,
it's
like Wolverine.
Well, no, but then you get, once Wolverine gets involved, giant size, then you have the soap opera love triangle.
Yeah, and it's mostly in the early days just Wolverine pining.
Yeah. But okay, Wolverine thinks he's in a love triangle and no one else realizes it.
But yeah, that's soap operas. That's all the cool stuff that Mary Houlihan is pulling from.
Yeah.
And I would be really curious to know what soap operas, if any, she watched or has watched.
That would have been, I should ask that in the AMA, and I didn't.
What stylistic elements of soap operas she finds the most compelling, and if she could choose a stylistic element of soap operas to insert into the modern, sort of TV style, what would it be?
No, this is why you're the Terry Gross of Planet Scum.
All that does is make me feel like I have this huge, like, looming thing to live up to, and then I just, like, doubt myself constantly.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did not mean to do that. I meant to compliment you and say you're doing good questions right there. You're asking those good questions.
No, you do not have to answer for the little voice inside of me that doubts everything I do.
You're asking good questions. You're asking good questions. You're asking good questions.
Oh, goodness. Well, Everyone should check out everything that Mary Houlihan does. You should
Yes.
absolutely check out her Patreon.
Yes, and we didn't talk about it this time, but her web series, CEO Skyscraper.
Oh my God, it's so
which has
good.
so many familiar faces from CGP.
Like
Martin
ridiculously.
Urbano and lots of like John Wan. So many people. You have to go check
The
it out.
paramedic.
The paramedic, Brian Marks.
Yeah.
Yeah, check it out. Check out everything she's done. Learn to paint with her.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love her Learn to Paints. Absolutely buy her things on Patreon. Follow her on all of the social medias. And we're really excited to see you on Wednesday for Enchanted Pumice. Before the show, if you didn't know, there is a pre-show that happens every week with an individual we call Purple Hat and an individual we call Miel. And before the pre-show is at, 7 o'clock?
7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern time.
Well, at 6 p.m. Pacific, they are going to be airing an interview between Purple Hat, the host of the pre-show, the People's Champion. He interviewed Mary Houlihan.
Yes, and he asked Mary if she knew that she had a show airing at that time, because rumors say she does. And she said the rumors are true. So I'm very excited to hear Purple Hat's interview with the genius behind Enchanted Pumice.
Yeah, so absolutely tune in on Planet Scum. Listen on our radio station, K-Scum. You will hear the whole interview. Mary Houlihan might pop back into the Discord at some point. There was a great AMA that I missed this afternoon. And yeah, we're really excited to see what happens in the next episode of Enchanted Pumice. All of you pum heads, get your questions ready. We're all going to talk to the cast after the show. I'm pretty excited.
So I was getting my nails done one day and I saw a poster on the wall that had the word pumice on it. And I got to thinking, I think it's a really funny word. And then I thought, oh, it could be a name of a spa. I guess it had an adjective before pumice. I guess enchanted, I want to say. And the rest is herstory.